Well, this is going to be interesting, and I bet it's going to be a lot of fun. This is a 1/12 scale competition 4-wheel drive electric buggy. Now, if you haven't seen one of these before, it's from LC Racing. It's the LC12B1, and it is a very cool little buggy, basically. I mean, we're so used to seeing so many 10 scale options. I'm pretty excited to check this out. LC Racing sent it over for me to share it with you guys, and you know, let's just dive right into it. So obviously on the outside, we've got a cab forward body on it, very low slung down to the chassis for, you know, better aerodynamics, competition buggy style. And we actually sent it over to Larry at Custom RC Graphics for the paint work. Check him out online. That's custom with a K. Very cool paint scheme he did here all the way down to the wing, and this actually is a pretty large wing. I put it up to a 10 scale wing, just a tad bit smaller than 10 scale, but definitely got to have a lot of downforce back there. But that wraps up the outside of it. Again, very fitting for a competition style looking buggy. And now let's get to the inside, which is actually loaded with some really cool features. And you know, I'll start off up front like normal, and these large shock bodies on here are all aluminum. They've got an aluminum top cap, aluminum lower cap, and a 3mm shock shaft on there. So, you know, some 10 scale vehicles only have a 3mm shock shaft. The top and bottom are plastic, but, you know, with a vehicle this size, I don't foresee that to be a problem. And this feels really good. This is a full build-up kit. You gotta, you know, go and assemble it yourself. It goes together well. You know, the instructions are pretty good, kind of on the basic side, but it will definitely get you through the building process. Now, it does have aluminum shock towers on here. We'll talk about front and rear. They're 2mm. They're a stamped aluminum, but they do have optional holes so you can go and adjust the shock position. The arms on here are a nice sturdy arm, a little bit of flex in there, but you know, kind of racing-like, and you know, definitely a racing-like setup as far as the caster blocks and steering knuckles go on it. For the size of the vehicle, the components look like they'll hold up to some racing style driving. You know, I'm definitely not basher style, but you know, definitely any type of track use, everything looks to be on par with what you would need. The links on here are all adjustable, so you could go and adjust your camber in tow. And there are sway bars included. There is actually multiple sway bars included, so you go and tune the roll effects of the sway bar, you know, right out of the kit. You don't need any optional parts there, which is pretty neat. All right, now inside the differential cases, both front and rear, oil-filled gear differentials, so you go and tune with oil if you want to. Pretty neat to see out of a vehicle this size. Steel outdrives, of course, and then the axles, they're a CV-style universal drive shaft. Again, very cool there. 24 ball bearings, if I remember correctly, throughout the entire kit, so the drivetrain, of course, rides nice and smooth. Now, this is a mid-motor kit, which is, you know, different from some of the other LC Racing stuff that's been out there. But, you know, the mid-motor design, you know, nice and agile out there on the track. Let me talk to you about the chassis. So this is a 2mm thick aluminum chassis. We've got, you know, little dirt guards here. You know, basically, as you would expect from a racing style of buggy, there is a little bit of kick up in the rear, which I found pretty interesting. Usually you've got a flat plate in the rear. There's some kick up in the front, of course. That's pretty much a given, but that was interesting to see the little kick up back there. And if I remember correctly, some manufacturers do this basically to reduce a little bit of wear and to reduce chassis scrub. So the top of the chassis, basically a single top deck on here, is a 2mm thick carbon fiber plate, which you know, is again very cool, very racing-like. Everything throughout this buggy is more on the high-end competition side than the sports side. I mean, even down to the steering cranks on here. The steering cranks are ball bearing supported. The arm that connects to the steering servo is an aluminum arm. There's a servo saver in there, and the link that ties the two bell cranks together is aluminum as well. So really nice setup. We've got dog bones in the center, and then in the center here we have a slipper clutch that sits between aluminum mounts. So, you know, again, nice machined aluminum parts throughout this thing. Pretty impressive for such a tiny buggy. All right, now in the rear, again, kind of just same thing in the front. We've got those large bore oil-filled shocks with the 3mm shafts. We've got sturdy nylon composite suspension arms and a decent-looking hub. You know, the top where the link connects, little kind of on the thin side. You know, if you're tumbling with this thing, I'd just really be careful. And I'm not sure if they have an aluminum option, but definitely something to watch out for because I think this thing's going to go fast. It looks like it's just meant to lay down some fast lap times. All right, and that kind of wraps up the suspension on there. There are metal plates that hold the hinge pins. There's a plastic insert in there. On the outside of the axles, there's 12mm wheel hexes. That's pretty cool to see. And then, of course, we've got these off-road block-style treads. There are foam inserts on the inside. We've got a cool dish wheel, very racing-like, and overall, just looks very cool. Wing mount is fixed, and just to throw this out there, they didn't show you where to drill the holes for the body and the wing and stuff, so just be careful when you're doing that. You don't want to offset the hole so your wing is shifted, so I just wanted to make you guys aware of that when you're putting this thing together. The battery sits over here. You can see the electronics layout, mid-motor again. This is a 4500 kV motor, and then this is a 2S LiPo battery pack. And the speed controller in here is a 35 amp speed controller. Now, LC Racing, they did supply me with the electronics. The kit does come with the servos, but the battery, speed controller, and motor is separate, but they helped me out there and supplied that with there. I do have a Futaba receiver that I'm going to control the car with. But overall, this is a very cool buggy. I think it shares a lot of parts with their Truggy, which is pretty cool. So you could have a couple vehicles from LC Racing in your collection that share parts if you need to. And I think this is just going to be really good for those that may have an indoor track, a small indoor track, that want to lay down some fast lap times. Maybe a 10 scale is a bit too large for it. This could be a fun class that could probably grow in a lot of places, and it'd be really cool to see something start up with these. But you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go hit a track. I'm just gonna go out, have some fun with it, and show you what it could do. All right, let's take a lap with this buggy. It's got some pretty quick acceleration. The jumping on this thing is absolutely awesome. Watch this thing. It literally jumps like an 8 scale, I should say 10 scale buggy. Look at the rip on that. For a little car that has a lot of rip, so smooth. I mean, it jumps almost effortlessly. Little rear kick up, pretty awesome. Let's get over this jump. Oh. What I've noticed so far in driving this thing is every time I crash it, it's still on all 4 wheels, which is pretty cool. This track is pretty loose. It hasn't been touched in a couple of days. I think they raced this past weekend. So it's pretty dusty out there, but still considering it's got some pretty good traction to it. I mean, look at this. The corner here. Look at that. Did you see how smooth that jump was? For such a small car, it is so easy to drive. I'm actually pretty impressed with these tires. I thought I was gonna have a problem with these tires. You see I checked up a little bit with the brake, was able to drop the nose nice and smooth, get the front wheels on the ground, keep going. I gotta carry my speed better on that back double, but this is my first 2 minutes of driving the buggy. Watch this jump. Nice and smooth over the roller. Pop it up and over the back tabletop. There we go, got some speed on the double. Dropped the nose a little too much. Through the sweeping corner. This little thing's a rocket on 2S. Powered perfectly. This is just so much fun to drive. There we go, I got that double this time. Nice under braking. Even has reverse out of the box. I did use reverse a couple of times so far, but I just love how smooth this buggy is. Just nice and easy. Look at that. They run a lot of 10 scale on this track, so it's not like, it's actually pretty smooth. I shouldn't say anything. It is pretty smooth for a 10 scale track, and so for this buggy, it is really, it's really doing a great job out there. All right, let's get back to the studio. All right, so before we get into my final thoughts, I just want to take a second and thank my friends over at Cali Mods Hobby Shop in New York for allowing me to, test the LC Racing Buggy out on their track. Very cool of them, and it's an awesome little track and was actually perfect for testing this buggy. Now, as I mentioned during the running portion of the video, that was a 10 scale track, but I think it was really perfect, for this size of vehicle. And, if you have a similar track in your neighborhood that you like going to, that maybe your 10 scale vehicle is a little too big, I mean, maybe something like this is really, something your club should look at. It is just a lot of fun, and it handled really well. It handled like a 10 scale buggy, basically. It was very easy to control. I was really surprised. Sometimes when you get into smaller vehicles, they could be a bit overpowered. Sometimes the torque in the motor isn't right, so it doesn't, jump properly and stuff, and it could be a little bit quirky, but this had the feeling of a 10 scale buggy, the feeling that people like to drive in a four-wheel drive 10 scale buggy. So that was all right here in this package, which was really cool. Through the corners and stuff, it did really well. The stock steering servo that comes with this, actually, let me take a moment to go back to the electronics, because I might have been a little bit vague before. It does come with the servo. However, you're going to have to source out the rest of the electronics. Now, LC Racing does offer all that stuff, and you could buy it as, in different pieces if you want to. It all depends on where you buy it. And I'll, of course, put a link in the description for the LC Racing website, and you could find a dealer near you, to source all this stuff from. But back to the electronics in here, it worked really well for this package. The steering was on point. It had a manageable on-power push to it, which was really cool. Coming out of that long straightaway, the little buggy ripped down that straightaway, for its size. Then going through the 180-degree turn, I'd have to hit the brakes, to get around the corner, and that's where the major push comes in. I mean, that's where it comes in with most vehicles. But the only thing I noticed during that portion of it was going from full brake onto full throttle, or after going around the turn, there was just a hair of hesitation, and for the speed controller it's in here, totally acceptable. It's got reverse in there as well, so it is, not a full-on racing speed controller, so, a little blip like that isn't such a big deal. But it's got great forward acceleration. I thought I was gonna maybe have an issue with the tires. The tires actually worked out really, really well. I'm still gonna say there are a bit of a downside, because you're kind of limited on what's out there for this particular vehicle. Maybe some of the 14 scale tires that are out there would be kind of a match for this, but that's just something to consider, just something to throw out at you guys. But I was actually really impressed with the performance of it, and maybe you can look at it as, maybe it's just a spec tire, and you could go that route if your club does want to, maybe pick up these type of buggies to go race with. But overall, it handled really well. It took a lot of hard hits. I hit some pipes pretty hard with this thing, full throttle, and it just bounced off. A lot of times it just stayed on all four wheels. The only thing I could probably say that's going to get messed up very quickly is the wing on the back. I already got a couple creases in this one. It's a pretty lightweight wing, so keep it on all fours. You shouldn't have a problem. But it's not a standard 10 scale wing like I mentioned before. It's a 12 scale wing, so if you do go and wreck that, you might have a little issue of replacing it with something aftermarket. You just got to go back to LC for it. But overall, a great experience with this little buggy. I really enjoyed it, and I think they do produce a quality vehicle here. I think the only thing you're gonna have to really keep in mind is if you do want to get parts, you're going to have to probably order them from somewhere. You're not going to be able to walk into your local hobby shop for it. But it was really cool that they gave extra sway bars with this. There was actually extra springs in here. I don't think I mentioned that before, for tuning options, and even other pinion gears for tuning options in here that was with our kit. So it's got some of the main stuff you're going to need for tuning it right out of the package here. So this is a great alternative for small buggy racing here. If you got a space to do it, I really say you should check this out. Again, I'll have all the information on how you could check out LC Racing in the description below. And while you're there, why don't you go down to the comments and let me know if you would actually consider racing a small scale four-wheel drive buggy.